Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Central Valley Film Podcast. I'm the host, Jacob True. I am the founder, producer, and director of the Central Valley Film Project. I am joined again today by two of the other producers and directors for the project, Marciano Zapian and Roman Acosta.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, guys?
It's been a while since we have been able to record. We have been very busy coordinating an event that some of you guys may have heard of. It was the 2-minute film challenge. We had our plates full, creating our own short films and coordinating with our social media pages to ensure that we're getting it to as many people's doorsteps as possible. So we have been unable to record for a small duration, but worry not. We are back, and we are happy to talk about the experience with you guys and to just sort of go over our thoughts on the little challenge and kind of our own experiences with it and what we had thought of each of the films and things of that nature. To open it up, though, I just want to give a big thank you to all of the entrants who had participated in the 2-minute film challenge. Needless to say, there was a lot of, diamonds in the rough, so to speak, during this time, despite the limited resources and the, relative short notice, we received some very strong submissions, and we're really grateful for you guys' participation and enthusiasm with the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's no easy undertaking trying to structure a 2-minute segment that actually is cohesive, makes sense, and tells a good story. I mean, it's if you listen to our previous podcast, it was it was formally about story structure, and I think that the format of this recent challenge was playing off exactly what Jacob True was saying during that podcast, and that was setup, payoff, and we've seen some really good payoffs. You guys got really creative, and we thank you for that.
Oh yeah, everybody put in a lot of work, and everybody tried working with what they had, and I think that was the most difficult thing, just working what's around you. I know us three filmmakers right here in the podcast definitely had our own difficult experiences, but everybody pulled through, and it was a really fun time.
Extremely fun. That is definitely one word that perfectly fits into this experience for me, was just how fun it was. It was definitely fun to try and create a film with the limited resources and the time constraint, and it was definitely fun to consume all of the media you guys had created for the challenge. So again, thank you guys. I cannot echo the sentiments enough of you two as well regarding the challenge. It was just really a cool experience. And kind of bouncing off of that, I was just wondering what your guys' thoughts were on the experience in general. What did you think of like the 2-minute film challenge as a whole, both as a participant and as one of the behind the scenes members of coordinating the challenge?
All in all, I thought that the experience was really was very enlightening. If anything, it really made me hone in on what deliverance of a story. So that I like to delve into nuances and get into the nitty gritty and what kind of undertones can I put to this short scene? Because let's face it, the format that we're going to be shooting is for this project, and as an up and coming auteur or just any person that's interested in film, making their first films, they're gonna be short films. So where my interests are delivering like a really hard hitting story or interesting segues in that story. The structure was bare bones, and how can I just tell a theme, make it entertaining, and just in and out. Like that was really insightful for me. Like, could I do it? And it was really fun doing it. Like, I feel like without all the stress of trying to like get technical or be sophisticated. It's almost it's oversimplified, but it's also sophisticated within its own right. Like, can I tell a story in 2 minutes? Oh, like, yeah, I got it. But then you have 10 minutes of footage, 20 minutes of footage, and you got to filter through all of it and piece together a story out of the mess. Or you have, and with the constraint, not to mention the constraint of being stuck indoors or on your own property, possibly even the short notice. What kind of scenes can I grab in a set amount of time too? So that was huge. And not only participating in it and thinking, oh, well, I'm going to try this experimental method of shooting. That was the entirety of my mindset going into the project. Like, I'm going to shoot this way, which, by the way, can I give it away?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do it.
Okay.
Do it.
I wanted to shoot the piece through the perspective of a canvas, and I thought, well, I'll just put plexiglass in front of a camera. But then I didn't realize the logistics of it. Okay, I'm gonna put plexiglass in front of the camera. Okay, how though? And then I thought of that like a day before actually filming, and I'm like, oh, decisions need to be made here. But going into it, that was the entirety of the project. Was can I shoot a film from the perspective of a canvas, and it paid off. So it's just it's experimental. So that was really cool to engage in, and then to see other people's take on it. Like, I am trusting somebody else who probably doesn't have camera experience, unless you're related to somebody who like is interested because you're interested in it. I'm handing the camera off to somebody who has zero camera experience or just knows how to push a button. It's all on you for framing, directing, and acting in it yourself. So that's huge. I mean, that can't be passed or glazed over very easily. So, yeah, I'm pretty pumped with the final product of not only my own creation but everyone else's. Like, I'm really proud of everyone that participated.
Yeah, Marcy. I thought both you and True had a really good setup payoff, and it really worked out in the end. I'm actually quite inspired by both of you guys. So, but as far as the 2-minute challenge goes, man, that was definitely a challenge. Just working with what you have, working with those limited resources. Like I said on the previous podcast or two, I brought in my whole family to help me. Even my mom, like at times, just here, hold this light there, and then let me stand right here. So it was all like coordination. Like when I was in front of the camera, because I'm not really in front of the camera a whole lot. I'm mainly behind it, getting that experience. But man, to be in front of it and try to direct your own film and like get this camera get this camera angle right, and then get this piece of lighting right. Man, that was tough. I had my brother helping me on cinematography, my sister on audio, on the boom operation. So it was a lot of work, but man, just I'm so proud of everybody who did it, especially the winner and the runner-ups. Really just really creative. Like the creativity you can put in a 2-minute film, it's like it's almost unstoppable, because you could come up with almost anything you want. And yeah, it's all about that setup payoff. Like Marcy was saying, how do you tell that story? Man, I think the story's anywhere you want it to be. Just I don't know, just do your best. Try anything at this point.
And if I could say, without completely without exclusion, the thing that inspired me most about your piece, Roman, was that it's so easy to add to be continued to a piece. And that's again, this is without exclusion, but it's so easy to add to be continued to a 2-minute piece, like it's an introductory piece, but you capitalized on it almost in a way that you would like stage a scene. Like it's one scene in a segue or a sequence or within a big sequence, a long sequence. So it told a story within itself, but it also left me wanting more. So it was a very densely packed, like mood driven story piece. I would. That's the thing I tripped out about the most. Like I tripped out on it that it was really like story driven. I don't know. I'm geeked about it. So,
dude, thanks,
about
man.
it.
No,
worries.
but what I liked about yours, Marcy, was like how simple it was. Same with True, man. Like I think both of you guys was so simple, but it was so effective and powerful, and it works. And like, I know True, like the curiosity behind yours, like that. I think that's what kept a lot of people like talking about, like, okay, like what happens now? And that's like the epitome of like the 2-minute film challenge. Like even we were talking about it, like the winner of the 2-minute challenge. We said it right there. That was a straight up like the perfect example of a 2-minute film. And I think yours too, Marcy, like just the simplicity and how like effective it was. Like I just praise that from a lot of people who entered this contest.
Definitely. Kind of bouncing off of the podcast we'd done previously, we had definitely talked about being overly ambitious in a small span of time. And all of the best performing films, I think, really highlight the ability of someone who can rein it in and understand that there's only a certain window they have to speak, and they knew to choose their words carefully rather than to meander about with the premise. And it's always those that just get to the point that are really the most captivating. And that's definitely what I had learned going through that experience. And we're already kind of getting into it, but I'm just curious as to your guys' thoughts with your own films in particular, like with expectation versus reality. Was it what you'd pictured in your head once you'd made it, or did it turn out a lot different? And like, if so, how? Like, for me, when I was making the film, I knew exactly what I wanted from it. And more or less, it kind of hit the marks I wanted it to. But definitely from the creator's standpoint, I didn't know if the film was functioning or not upon release, because I had just edited so much and watched it so many times over. In a 2-minute film, it's not hard to watch the whole thing. So I had seen it so many times that I was kind of numb to the experience, to where, in an ironic sense, I don't get to experience my own film just because I was so familiarized with the anatomy of it. So I didn't know if I was instilling like, oh man, are people going to be like in awe at the end? Are people curious in the middle? Or are they like worried? Is it like kind of creepy in the middle? Did I hit the tone wrong? And I just had no idea upon release, and I would say that was probably one of the most intense cases of that I'd had in a while, because even with the 48-hour film and with Roses Are Red, of course you can't be certain of the experience the audience will have, but I felt more confident going into it with each of those films about the formula and about the mechanics of it. I think with just the brevity of the 2 minutes, it was something new to me. And furthermore, something else that was new to me was I'm a large believer in networking, as I have definitely championed before on this podcast and on the page. However, this was my first time doing a completely like self-produced work. There are only 2 shots that weren't 100% my doing. There was one where my older brother did a push-in on me once I sat up on the bed. And the second one was my girlfriend holding up a light outside to shine in on me on the second to last shot. Everything else was 100% me putting up the camera, me having to run to the other angle, and like kind of getting an idea of like, okay, I should move the light here, do this, and like having to take quick notes, and then quickly doing that. And it definitely really extended the process beyond what I thought it would be. It was definitely a lot longer. The only times I'd ever done something on my own was like those announcement videos that we'll release, or like something like that, like a talking headshot. I had never done a like film by myself. So it was definitely interesting to try and do it on my own. It presented its own challenges, and it made me a lot more grateful to have a loyal crew around me more often than not.
Yeah, very very impressive, man.
Oh yeah, thank you, man. And what were your guys' thoughts and experiences with your own films?
Well, as you may have known, True, I shot too much footage for this one, but I kind of blame myself for writing the script too long, and then that's what happens when you try to. I don't know. I mean, I just ended up shooting, like, bottom line, I just ended up shooting too much. I wrote too much, so I shot too much, and we had to tell a different story. We had to tell a different story in the edit. So it was all in the matter of editing in the editing room. Like, how do we condense it? How do we shorten everything? And yeah, I mean, we sort of went as we went on. We sort of I didn't really put much preparation time into this one, just because, like, I knew I wanted to experiment like on the go. So if there was if I'm in this location in this room right here, okay, let's mess with the lighting, let's mess with the angle, with the shot real quick. It was just sort of like that the whole time, and it was more or less like exactly what I wanted. I think the sound was something that was missing from it. I pictured like this more glorious, like triumphant feeling, but I kind of like ignored that in the editing process. But I mean, I'm so happy with how everything came out, to be honest. So
That's good. So in terms of like expectation versus reality,
You know what? I will say, like I'm gonna have to shoot you down on that last one. The music at the end, honestly, from the people I showed it to, they were like they were in awe of like how well it worked. Personally, me, I was the first one taken by it. I like the acoustic sound anyway, but like going back to it though, like, yeah, dude, I tripped out on how well it worked. That was one of the things that was hard for me. Heads up, every film that I write, there is, I think just until recently when I started writing, well, I have been writing it for a while, but I started working on it again. My feature, that has been the only piece that I've had music in mind for. The rest of the pieces, even the piece that is to come, I did not have music in mind. Like I wanted to let action speak for itself, but by True's guidance, the music will sell it, and sure enough, it did. And for your piece, for sure, dude. So that's
thank you, man. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah. I don't know if I cut you off. If you got.
Oh no, I'm done, man. Go ahead. I want to hear what your thoughts were and experiences were like.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to return back to the previous topic, but what I will say is a lot of the successful pieces that I've seen, there was always a commonality about it now that I think on it, and that was pre-production. Like, you had where you wanted to go in mind, and it was concrete and finite. Like, to highlight Matt's piece, like, he literally shot himself like over and over. Like, he plotted where he was going to be, where the shootout was going to take place. That is rehearsal. So good on him for that. That's the thing that I was most enthralled by was just how well staged it was. And the same thing with going on with it. Dave Storm, he had a drawing in mind and everything like fit. You have an idea in mind initially, but then as you go along, it kind of goes a little off. It doesn't necessarily go a little off the rails, but you have to improv a little bit. But that is much better and much more it's much more admirable, or just like you take notice to it much more if there was a starting point. And I noticed that a lot of the difficulty in my own piece, like I had an idea in mind. I had where I wanted it to go, how I wanted to get from point A to point B. There's a painter stuck in his room and he locks himself in the room to he goes crazy, but notice how vague my terms are. He goes crazy because he has a concept, but there is no. So even in writing it, it was it was easy to act it because that's what the piece was just even writing it was okay. I want an artist to lock himself in the room. He has a deadline, but that deadline is the thing that's constraining him to the point of desperation, and in his desperation, he ends up with his finished work. I had that idea in mind, but there was so much like B-roll footage that went with it to in between to fit in to this piece. And I wanted specific beats, and I recorded the specific beats, but then I looked back on it and it's like, well, this didn't work. This didn't work well. This worked well. So that's where a lot of the improv comes in. But ultimately, if you're grounded, that's the thing that I noticed with my own piece, and I also that's the commonality that I like coming back to it. That's the commonality that I saw with like a lot of the eye-catching pieces was pre-production. You had an idea in mind, you set yourself up, and in that you kind of lock yourself down to it as well. Like a drawing. Like if you have all this footage of you drawing out this picture, you better hope that whatever comes with it is going to fit that piece and fit that mold. But it also keeps you on track. So that's, again, it's these little things that we can take note on to add to our own pieces later down the line, which it can only make us stronger. So yeah, that ultimately was my experience, was just I had an idea. It was vague concepts in the middle. I had a point A and a point B. Can I make it there? And I got it there. In my opinion, I got it there to the best of my ability within a 2-minute constraint and stuck in a room. Like, and just going from concept to act to tangibility. So I don't know, like it's really cool to see the people that got that as well. And it's just, yeah, dude, like you never know until you know, but you can sure plan it out. Like True he grew callous to his piece because it's like, well, I plotted this thing out as much as I could. Like I can't even really enjoy it myself. And on top of that, like you plan for specific beats to have an effect, but you never know. And you never know how it's going to come out in the end. You can have it locked down as much as you want, but you never know. But it's always good to have a lock on it.
Yeah, like something I would really want to push for any filmmakers listening to this is the idea of understanding how much you can cheat once you put a film together, so to speak. Kind of bouncing off of Marciano's film, where he was just talking about how much fat there was in the B-roll, just because it was just that one angle. He kept the camera rolling while he just acted out the film and provided himself as many options as possible. Upon first viewing of the footage, it was concerning as an editor, because I had not yet been exposed to the full vision, and looking at the footage, I was like, oh no, like, is this the man that's going to direct a film for the Central Valley Film Project? And I was like, oh God. And then upon further review of the footage and stitching it together, the vision becomes so much clearer and so much better. And needless to say, if you have seen Art by Marciano, it's a phenomenal short film. It was definitely one of my favorites to come out of it. And it's just all because of the idea of I know how this is going to be put together, and once that vision is shared, then you can further craft the film into what it's supposed to be. And one of the picks in the runner-up category was 7 Weeks by Jenny Biggs. If you'd seen that film, you'll see that I had starred in that film along with her. I had helped her out a little bit as an actor. I did not help, though, in any way in terms of technicalities. And a fun fact about the filming of that is there's a scene where she's frosting a cake, and she's frosting this cake on the counter. But since the lens wasn't cooperating with doing the reverse shot on her reaction of it, she stepped like 8 feet away from the counter and then pretended to frost the cake and is nowhere even near the counter. But in the edit, it looks like she's just standing there, frosting a cake. But in reality, she's just, smushing air around. So it's just these ideas of how can I cut corners and make it look like I'm doing one thing, but then another thing is happening. And that innovation, I think, is necessary not just in a time constrained film, but in any film really. And once you develop that mindset of problem solving, it really pushes you above and beyond your filmmaking talents or your base talents.
Yeah, big time. No, it's so interesting to see the innovations that we have to come up with on the fly. Like if this challenge highlighted anything, it's like we're building. This is really cool. We're building as we're going along, even in the podcast. Pre-production, structure. Okay, starting out, you structure your story, set up payoff, and then you really have to get concrete and rehearse whatever you're doing, because you are the prime source of material. It's, I don't know. It's just interesting to see to have to plot it out. Like there are things that you have to cheat in a specific way, and it's all trial and error. Like a week seemed like an ample amount of time, but I think somebody also made the comment when we released or when we posted out about the conclusion of the challenge. Wow, that seems like an ample amount of time for 2 minutes. When you get down to it, it's testing things, trying things, because I'm recording a sequence, but then I have to stop, reset, but based on what I just recorded, and play with it. I have to sit and watch. That's time. That's double the time, as opposed to having somebody behind the camera constantly who has the vision and who's locked down to that vision. While other people are executing it, you are the sole executor to all of it. That's the thing that was admirable again about this challenge. I don't know. I keep going back to it, looking back on it more and more. This wasn't a easy undertaking. I know I'm going to continue saying it throughout this podcast, but again, hats off to these people.
It was a really cool experience to see everyone kind of turn in their films and to see all the different takes people had on it, whether it be through genre or through style or just through their own creative standpoints on how to get past everything. So it's definitely one of the coolest things to see, as a fellow filmmaker. Moving into the production phase, how did that look for you guys? Was it harder to produce your film than you had previously thought, or was it easier? I had already kind of spoken on that sentiment, I guess, talking about setting it up and having to run back, kind of get an idea of it and then run away and then kind of do that. I ended up using a C-stand as a stand-in for me to be okay, this is where I'm going to be in frame. That's about as tall as me. And I would just kind of frame up on the stand and Yeah, it was pretty sad. I was like, oh man, fellow stick. Standing right there for me. And that was something that I had to overcome. But to kind of go further in that, I wanted to kind of push myself in two areas. One is sound design, but that was definitely more in post-production. And then the other one was being able to light my environment. I'm very good at lighting a subject and getting a subject to look any way I want, but lighting the environment around the subject has been something I had found challenging. And just trying to think of that and think of creative ways to do that was definitely something that I needed to kind of practice with and play with. So for an example would be the wide shot following me grabbing a glass of water. If you guys have not seen these films, they're available on our Instagram page and Facebook page. So make sure to give that a look if you haven't already. But the third shot, which is me kind of finishing getting a glass of water and doing a little scoot, as I turn the corner. That was a very specific lighting setup that I had, to where I had one just kitchen light that I had kind of on the left corner to kind of give the refrigerator a nice kind of clean look. Another light to light myself up just a tad because I was too dark. So just a fill light. And then another light to light the couch in a warm indoor tone to contrast from what I would use as the background light or the moonlight, so to speak, which I use to light the clock. So there's about 3 layers of lights going on right there. And even then, I would say it could have been done better. And another instance would be when I'm walking down the hallway with my broken lightsaber, where you get that blue light once again against the back wall. And then you see the light of the porch kind of crawling against me as I'm walking down. That was supplemented by another video light because I wanted to really emphasize the kind of chromatic pattern my door was creating.
So true.
So,
did you, sorry to cut you off, but did you write the script, or, because since you were acting in it, did you have to write the script, or did you just like put yourself in front of the camera and just like go as you went along?
I definitely wrote the script. Writing the script was necessary in terms of understanding the pacing and kind of giving myself a plan to go off of. I'm a strong proponent of pre-production, so even though I did have the exact plan in my head and I was doing it all by myself, you have to affirm that your vision is equal to reality, because it's easy to see like, oh, I have this great idea, but then once you do it in execution, it completely falls apart or is vastly different than what you had previously foreseen. So by getting it on paper, I was able to separate myself from the work and kind of see what that looked like in reality. It's kind of like, okay, how long is this moment really going to take? Is this going to be the like 15-second moment that I think it's going to be? Or is it going to only be like 5 seconds? Or is it going to be like a minute? And by being able to write it on script, you get the idea of about how long it was going to be. And I almost got it on the dot with the script formatting. If any of you don't know, if you follow proper screenplay format, 1 page should be equivalent to 1 minute. And mine was a little under 2 pages, and my film ended up being a little under 2 minutes. So it's definitely worked more often than not for me. Of course, there are exceptions. If you have a lot of action or a lot of dialogue, it could vary one way or the other. But it's a good rule of thumb. So for that reason, I definitely did a lot of pre-production just to make sure I knew going into it what to expect. So how about you guys? What were your thoughts going into like your production? Did it look different? Did it look the same to what you had? What challenges did you face on set, and how did you overcome those?
Man, I thought production went very well. I knew exactly where I was going to be shooting, who was going to be helping me. I think my main concern was going to be like how the cinematography was going to end up. Like I'm a real stickler for like how like shots look and like what's in the shot. So, if a shot is in a certain way, I tend to like redo it until it's like just exactly how I want it. But I had my brother on cinematography, and so I mean, he's fairly new to the game, so I was like trying to teach him as we went along and like telling him exactly what I wanted. But sometimes it's hard to what's that word, to like the communication, like justifying your choices and letting them know like your vision. And sometimes it's hard to like translate to each other, but I think ultimately it worked out for the most part. Yeah, I think lighting was another one. I wanted to experiment more with the lighting, but for the most part, it was some basic, simple lighting that worked out in this film. So nothing really complicated there, as much as they wanted to experiment with. But all in all, I think it still worked and went very smooth in my experience.
That's dope. Like that's really cool that even in that experience you still had, well, I mean, obviously local, like really local crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome that you had that to lean on. Whereas like me, I realized that I was limited to what I could film on a tripod, because as much as I would want to frame up, I would also be fighting against myself. And I was initially when I set the camera up. I'm notorious for this, like whenever I'm on a set. But I frame up. Like you'll hear that over and over. Frame up. I'm gonna make adjustment. Frame, like over and over. I'm gonna want to fight against myself, but the fact that it was locked down, or I had to write something that was locked down, like it was. As much as I would want to go into different takes, I felt that I wanted to play into the challenge a little bit more. And the best way that I could do that is not touch the camera, be in front of the camera, directing the flow of the story, and with no externalities. Most of the light was natural lighting. I had a light wand bouncing off a mirror, because there's a mirror in the room, lightly. Like I had it aimed towards the corner with the edge of the light hitting the mirror, so that way I get a little bit of fill. But that's really it. Like there was no formal external like additions or any sort of supplement. Yeah, huh?
I said plug in.
Yeah, there was no supplemental aspect. So I tried to write within that. And that was the big thing, is I write to adaptation, like that's the first like stage of combat. Like I would much rather write it in a way that I can do it, or I can adapt to whatever changes are there. And I feel like I've seen other directors do that, like the notorious directors or Kubrick. He'd always come around with a typewriter. It was a very specific one. We won't get into it because it'll just expose how how invested I am. But
Nerd.
But you also have Spielberg that was like writing Jaws while he was on the set of Jaws. I don't know. I feel like that's the first that's the first line of defense, as opposed to the go-to of, oh, I'll probably just fix it in post, or I'll film not so much filler, but I think coverage is the big thing. Coverage is nice, but if there is no anchor to cleave onto, it's time, and it's time that you're going to take editing or trying to figure out how I can add it to my sequence, as opposed to just, if you just sit down, think it out, and write based on what you have, like rewrite the script based on what you have. That's to me the first line of defense, and that's what I did. Was I write to strength. If I don't have any rigging or any gear, I don't have any lighting. I would want to shoot in natural light as much as I can. If I don't have any rigging, then I'm gonna write the scene gritty, so that way those camera shakes are a part of the story. They are a part of the mood. They fit the mood. I have one location, access to one location, and it's a very rigid location. I write a rigid scene. It's stuff like that. That was the biggest challenge. Or were we even on challenges? Ultimately, that was the one thing that I focused on, was just writing to my strength.
Working with what you have, man. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And to all aspiring filmmakers out there, Marcy's film is a clear example of pure minimalism. To where, or even the winner of the 2-minute film challenge, Matthew's film. Again, we have that posted on our page if you haven't seen it. But that entire film was shot on an iPhone by his mother. She is definitely, I would assume, not a cinematographer. And the iPhone is definitely no filmmaker's camera, although it does film 4K and it's great. But that's not something someone who gets into film would consider a great camera. But really, it's just yourself putting that limitation on there. And he had made a great film. It was edited wonderfully. It cut to the song amazingly. It was just incredibly fun to watch. And bouncing back to Marcy's film, he just used the GH4 with a kit lens on there, I believe. And it was just completely minimal. It was onboard audio even. He wasn't even using a microphone or anything supplemental. He was just having the camera, even for the audio, which is a very bold move, by the way. I will strongly warn anyone considering using onboard audio to not do that. But it just goes to show that story precedes, technical proficiency, So it definitely disproves a lot of my theories in some regards. And it just goes to show that the only thing stopping you is yourself, to where if you just find a good window with some good daylight coming in and a good angle with some good story, it's going to attract a lot more people than some blockbuster that doesn't have any passion, behind it.
I agree 100%, man.
You got a camera in your pocket, use it, go for it. They caught on to it. Roman and Jacob caught on to it really quick. But for me, because I was so invested in the story and what was happening, the camera did not even faze me. And I remember midway through, Jacob was like, this, or no, it was you, Roman. Did you say? Yeah, it was you who said this was shot on an iPhone, wasn't it?
No.
Or was it true?
Wait, for your film or which one?
For Matt. I'm sorry, for Matt.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I remember
Matt.
this story, yeah.
I did say that, yeah.
Yeah, we finished it, and I was like, yeah, it looked really good, too. And then Roman interjected and said, yeah, it looked like it was shot on an iPhone. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess it was. I didn't even consider that, Yeah. So it really goes to show if you're captivated and invested in the story, the camera goes off to the side. Like that's within the in the back of the viewer's head. If it's even there. It's always character and story first.
I just came to the realization as well, and again I taught my hat off to this guy. He didn't use any audio. He used a song. He played to
No,
strength.
sir.
Oh, wow.
Good for you.
I just realized
my
that too. Wow.
gosh.
Oh yeah, no, that was one of my first thoughts when he made a music video. I was like, oh, clever. You don't have to worry about any of the sound or anything like that. It was just fun staging, fun blocking, fun recording. It was really great stuff. And that kind of transitions into your thoughts on like all the films submitted. We've talked a lot about our personal experience, in production and pre-production, and just kind of our thoughts into crafting a 2-minute film. What were your guys' thoughts on the films submitted, or like what were some things that surprised you about them? For me, the idea that film is a form of expression has always reigned true to me, but I think this affirmed it in a brand new way for me, and in a way that really opened my eyes to film as like a pure art form, rather than like just a storytelling device, because since I've always viewed film as a collaborative experience, I think a film has its own voice, and the voices of all the artists, come together in that. But since the 2-minute film challenge was made in isolation and with limited resources, each of the individual filmmakers clearly had their own voice in the film, to where through the style, through the story, and just through the film, I was like, oh, like this is this person's film for sure. Oh, this is this person's film for sure. And like I felt the voice of every single filmmaker through their film. And as potentially pretentious as that sounds, it was a really moving experience for me to really get this idea of like, man, all these people had put their time, their energy, and their passion into a film that was crafted solely for our contest, So again, thank you to everyone who had done that. But that was definitely the most surprising element for me, was just how unique each film was to its respective filmmaker.
Yeah, man, I think you nailed it right there. Yeah, everybody had their own voice. I was just thinking about it right now. It almost looks like everything came so easy to them because they already knew like what they wanted to tell exactly. So you can tell that really translated onto their final product. Like they knew for sure they wanted to tell this particular story in this particular way, and I think that really showed at the end of it. Like it almost like tells you like who these people are. Like let me add to that. Like it almost lets you know like who these filmmakers are, like their characteristics, their personality. So I think those films really like speak to them, like, and it translates to us like by like letting us know like who they really are through these films in that expressive form you had mentioned not too long ago.
Yeah, man, it's intriguing to say the least to see the mindset. There, again, first and foremost, the challenge itself was a problem to be solved, if anything, and these people solved them in individual and unique ways, but through that we were able to experience like the person themselves. It was a snapshot into, as like cliche as this is going to sound, it was a snapshot of their brain in activity, like in thoughts in motion. It's a really interesting thing to see.
Yeah, I hope we can do this again. To be honest, I know a lot of people expressed to me, at least. I don't know if you guys heard anything, that a lot of people really missed out on this, and they want a second chance of competing. So, hopefully, maybe sometime in the future we can get that in the works again.
Yeah, just that unique snapshot and identity to each of those films. Like, I hate to be a bit tangential here, or just kind of like go off on a segue, but I do have to mention just like one film in particular that did not win and did not get a runners up, but I think was very entertaining and that I loved deeply. One of the other judges, I'm not going to say names, wasn't necessarily a fan of it, but it was a film called The Shoe. And I must say that that film, I had a brief meeting with the filmmaker last summer. His name is Saul. His sense of humor is one of the most unique forms of humor I have seen amongst people. It's just a very specific taste to where it's either love it or hate it. I would equate it to a Eric Andre or something of that nature. And it's just stuff like that. So where unfortunately the film didn't land a spot due to some like technical improficiencies and things of that nature. But I personally thought it was hilarious, you know, and for any of the filmmakers that didn't get a placement, I would highly coach you guys into teaching yourselves in the technical world and into technical proficiencies, but do not let it take away from your voice and your style, because that's one of the most valuable things that you're carrying. You know, like I said, like in a film like The Shoe, it wasn't very technically proficient and definitely had rooms for improvement. But without a doubt, its glowing strength, its golden medal, where it's proudly on its neck, is that just incredible sense of humor and just very bizarre like path it chose to take. And I would not want to see that change one bit. So for all the filmmakers out there, if you didn't get to be placed on this go round, or if you didn't get to participate on this go around, we might put on another film challenge, who knows? But regardless, focus on honing the ability to tell your story. Don't change the story, because that's definitely one of your most valuable assets whenever you are making a film.
If I could interject, I will say that honestly, the people that weren't or didn't make the runners-up category, I will say that you are winners within your own right. While we are toasting each other and toasting other films, the ones that toasting the other films that were that made it in the ranks, you are winners in the fact that you get to learn something. Like, film is a language, and that's like, I attribute it to, you have an idea of what you want to say to somebody in a foreign language, but then when you say it, you see the subtitles and it comes out something else. It's close, but no cigar. And it's definitely interpreted not the way that you would want it to be interpreted. But ultimately, you get a time to be introspective and look out look from the outside objectively. And that's something that's rare, especially when you like hit a mark, because it's hard to. There are things that could be tweaked when you do hit that mark that you just completely neglect, because you think, oh well, I hit a home run this one, but all the little things start to add up. So just it's just little tweaks here and there, and just look at it from an outside perspective, like, and learn. Learning is first and foremost the one thing that I would give high marks. That's the one thing that I aspire to is learning. And I think there's a high margin of failure with film. I hate to just like take a completely dark turn, but there's a high margin of failure of things that just don't hit, cues or beats that just didn't make the cut, but we do it anyway. Because we aim to learn, we aim to see what works, what doesn't, and build this language that's continuing on. So, I mean, even the best, some of the best filmmakers, in my opinion, if you look at their short films, their first entries, they're like not even coherent a lot of the time, but there are notes of it that you can look on and then see them play out in their more successful films. like they have a foundation to learn from. So don't be discouraged. Just continue to learn. And complete segue from that dark and lecturous turn. Cephalopod Films, you have a place in my heart as the winner. I'm sorry. If technically it wasn't the most proficient film, mood-wise, it was definitely the most proficient film. I'm holding back laughter because I'm thinking about aspects that just got me. And I think if I had to, because it's aptly named The Shoe, I will have to make note of the one thing that I remember the most is just that quick zoom on the shoe. Good for you. If you left it there, you would have been successful because it's called The Shoe. You got a shoe. Everything else was.
What about the
I
insert?
got what I paid for. I can't be upset.
Everything else was
What
bonus.
about the insert on the shoulder?
Oh
yeah.
my goodness! See the things.
Hey, buddy.
The things that shouldn't work worked, and you should take that as a blessing. And honestly, I will keep that in mind, and I hope you continue to make better. I hope you continue to make more content, and it only gets better from here. Because if it does, then you're gonna take the world by storm. Because that is funny.
It would be a travesty to lose any of these filmmakers, like in that like idea of like being discouraged or just not pursuing it anymore. Because each entry had a clear like stealing of potential, even amongst the non-runners up. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not one to give out empty platitudes or to falsely compliment. I don't think it's very productive to do things like that, but in this case, I am 100% sincere in saying I would love to see each person who made a submission continue their path down either as a recreational filmmaker or as a professional filmmaker, because each of you clearly have a talent. Another very charming entry we had, I think it was called The Case or something to that effect. To where it was essentially 2 minutes or like something in the ballpark of that, of a man walking down an orchard with a case, and then he passes the case to someone, and that's essentially the end of the film. It was a little confusing upon a first viewing. I was a little thrown off. I was like, that was it? Like, what was the story? I'm not quite sure. And then so I checked their post to see if they left a description or anything like that to put the film in a new light, and sure enough, they said, oh, here is our entry for the hashtag 2-minute film challenge. It made more sense to us in the conceptualization of the film, but we had fun making it. And I think that is literally the perfect sentiment for like any filmmaker. If you were to look back on my first films, I think I could easily copy paste that and it would fit perfectly in that description, where it made a little more sense, conceptualizing it, but I had fun making it. And kind of staying true to that passion is what's going to really push you to the next level and above and beyond, So shout out to, I believe the name is The Case. I would verify the title, but the account had gone private, so I no longer have access to the film. But shout out to The Case, shout out to The Shoe, shout out to literally every submission. We may not have been able to explicitly reference yours, but you could literally DM us and we'll give you more in-depth feedback on what we love about the film and areas of improvement to a more specificity. We really want to uplift filmmakers and we really want to elevate that. And if you would like to see a video where we break down each of the films, more in depth, we will happily create something like that. Feel free to message us about that as well. But it was really a blast to have everything like that going on. Just as a closing idea or a topic, this is our first time trying to host an event, so to speak. Even though it was solely over social media, this is our first time trying to do something like this. So I just want to ask you guys, would you want to see something like this within the near future, or would you want to wait for a little longer, or where are some areas that you think we could improve upon with the challenge moving forward?
Yeah, because we'd love to see more submissions and more engagement from the filmmaking community. If we've stoked this much, especially considering the circumstances, I can only imagine how we can only go up in value, in production value, and just interest. So yeah, just if you have any interest at all or any contribution, it really is invaluable. So be sure to message us and let us know.
Yeah, if we ever do this again, I highly encourage any filmmaker to try their hand and submit something to us, at least for the next time. Hopefully, we do this contest.
Definitely. Like I said, I cannot emphasize enough. The biggest critique I have for this challenge is just more. I want to see more. I want to see more submissions.
Yep.
I want to see, I want to see more from this community, because I know there is more. I want to see more from each of these filmmakers, because I know there's more to be had from you guys. Each of the submissions are so talented and so creative that I know on a second go round, or upon further honing of the skills, that you each respectively could turn into a really influential filmmaker. It all just comes with the dedication and with the time and the practice and the mastery of craft, because I think fundamentally each of us can be a storyteller. It's just a matter of mastering the craft of storytelling. And I think the 2-minute film challenge has been emblematic of that, as we had submissions from, I would say, every corner of life, which is, again, a very beautiful and humbling way to look at it, and I just want to see more, That's the best way I can put it. So that's going to wrap it for this podcast. Thank you all for listening, and thank you all for being able to come all this way to kind of hear our thoughts on the 2-minute film challenge. If you want to see any more content regarding this challenge, whether it be a brand new challenge or us breaking down the films submitted to us, feel free to let us know in the comments below or direct message us. We're available on all social media platforms at CVFP209. Thank you all again so much, and we hope to hear from you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys later.